to all the participants. We are going to start with our first session today for the program, that is on design of rubrics. So before I start with this particular detail, I want to know that how many of you are already using rubrics at institute level? How many of the faculty members are already using rubrics as an evaluation tool at institute level? You can also reply in the chat box. Okay, one participant is saying they are not using rubric. Any member who is using rubric? So there are only 3 replies available with me. 4 reply that they are not using rubric. So when it comes to the rubric, the simple thing that we need to understand is it is an evaluation criteria. And it is also used for the continuous assessment for the student that we do on regular basis. So when it comes to design a rubric, one can go for formative evaluation also, and one can go for summative evaluation also with the use of this particular criteria. As far as rubrics are concerned, it is always prepared at departmental level. So if you said me that is there any standard rubric that we can use for our student, there is no standard rubric available. There is a criteria, or we can say the standard format is available when it comes to the design of the rubric. But as far as this particular evaluation criteria is concerned, the faculty of department need to involve themselves to design this criteria for the student population. Once the faculty design this criteria, the higher authority need to approve this format of the rubric used for the student. And when it comes to the design of the rubric, it is always as per the level of the students you have at institute level. So there is no standard rubric available. The standard format for the rubric is available. As a faculty, as a departmental member, you all need to sit together and design this evaluation criteria. So keeping this in view, we are going to start this particular session on development of a rubric. So when it comes to the design of the rubric, there are many things that we need to consider. Either it may be the academic criteria that you need to follow at institute level as far as evaluation points or grades are concerned. What kind of test, what kind of activities that you are going to give to your student. All these parameters need to be very clear if you want to design this evaluation tool at institute level. So in this particular session, we are going to cover what is the concept of rubric and its importance for evaluating student performance. So maybe many of you are using Google Classrooms for engaging classes for your student. In Google Classroom, again, there is one option available with us to design a rubric. So that is a format of a rubric. What are the different dimensions or what scale you are going to decide? What are the description of those dimensions that you are going to give? That is the choice of the faculty as per the level of the students you have. Yes, format is available in Google Classroom, but what are the major parameters I need to consider while designing such kind of evaluation criteria that we consider in this particular session? There are variety of rubric sheets available. So on online platforms nowadays, there are many of the platforms available where analytical kind of rubric sheet is available. But if as a faculty, I'm using it for my classroom activities or for my formative assessment, I can also design holistic kind of rubric that require minimum time for preparation and minimum time to assess the performance of the student. There are task specific rubrics also, there are developmental rubric also. So there are variety of rubrics available with us. So we will discuss one by one in details that what these rubrics contain. Next is the design scheme for the formation of the rubric. So when we said design scheme for the formation of the rubric, so there is a standard criteria that we are going to follow. Say, for example, if there are 6 different departments or 5 different departments at your institute level, so it is not that one department is using a different criteria for evaluation and another department is using a different criteria for evaluation. As far as evaluation criteria or evaluation tools are concerned, all the departments need to design similar kind of criterias. So your design scheme need to be same for all the students, for all the branches in your department. Explain various steps taken into consideration while okay. So sorry for the interruption. We were discussing the different type of the design schemes that are available. So when it comes to design these type of rubric sheet at institute level, we need to decide that this is the standard format on the basis of which we are going to design this evaluation tool. And as a faculty, when I'm designing any, not only rubric, even any of the evaluation criteria, in that particular case, I need to map that what are my learning outcomes, what is my instructional strategy or method or media that I have selected for my students. And after delivering instructions to my student, what are the probable outcome I expect from my student or from my class in terms of their performance, and based on the proper procedure followed in a class, started from the classroom delivery to design of different activities, what need to be the evaluation parameters of the performance. It may be your workshop practice, it may be your practical activity, it may be your project work, it may be industrial training, it may be internship, and even it may be a written assignment, it may be a case study analysis, it may be a role play method. So we need to decide that what are the different steps need to be taken care of when it comes to design rubric for a student. So all these parameters we are going to discuss in detail. So I hope up to know today is the last day of your program, and I hope up to know you all know what we mean by assessment. Any member from the group? What is the difference between assessment and evaluation? I hope it is clear to you all. Yes, any member from the group?
Um, Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
ma'am.
Ma'am, assessment is feedback from student to the instructor or teacher,
Okay.
and evaluation is feedback from teacher to the student
Feedback from teacher to student. Thank you very
about
much, ma'am.
about their learning.
Okay. Any another member who would like to add something to it? There are two participants who raised their hands. Sir, would you like to add something to it? Rupali ma'am, Rajashekhar sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, in assessment, the feedback is taken, and in evaluation, the systematic grading system is followed. Giving like a card, report card the students are getting. It's that type of evaluation is done. It is a systematic process, and taking feedback only is the assessment of skills and other things of students or learners.
Thank you very much, Rupali ma'am. Up to some extent, you are right with the elaboration of these two terms.
Thank you, ma'am.
So when it comes to assessment and evaluation, it is not only the feedback. So when it comes to the component of the feedback, na, whether we are doing assessment of the student or whether we are performing evaluation at our part as a faculty, both parameters help us to obtain feedback and provide feedback to the student. So feedback can be a verbal feedback, it can be written feedback, or it can be the non-verbal feedback also. So assessment and evaluation involve the component of feedback. We can obtain feedback, we can provide feedback. When it comes to an assessment, assessment can be numeric, assessment can be qualitative. So when you said a very good boy, or you have done a wonderful job, and when you said that this is an excellent thing that you have performed today, so we are giving feedback only. This is a verbal kind of a feedback only, but at the same time we are assessing the performance of the student on a qualitative basis. So it is not going to add to the final score sheet of the student. So when I said na, in third semester you are able to obtain 80% of the marks, that may not necessarily include the component of assessment. It may be the final end term evaluation that we carry out at the end of the semester. So when we said internal evaluation, so there is a set criteria by universities and by board that for internal evaluation, maybe there are 40 marks and 40 marks divided into 3 or 4 different categories. And based on that, the teacher need to give mandatory activities to the student. That is the component of your evaluation. So that is going to add to the final score sheet of the student, final grade of the student, or add to the final rank of the student. When I said a surprise test, but it is not for evaluation purposes. It is just for check the teaching effectiveness or how much students are participating or engaging themselves in learning activity. So I'm assessing the performance of my student, that whether they are able to understand the content delivered or not, whether I am able to deliver effectively to my student, or do I need to change the instructional method or the way I'm delivering instructions to the student, that is not appropriate, that is not up to the mark of my student. So when I'm assessing, I am collecting feedback to change many things, to take many instructional decisions. And at the part of the student population, when I said I'm assessing the performance of my student, I want my student to gradually improve the quality of the work that is produced by them, so that I will be able to prepare them for the final evaluation. So we have performed many of the, say for example, in laboratory investigation, there are 10 different experiments conducted by the student, but for their final evaluation, we will carry forward a written test, a viva voce, and demonstration performed by the student. So evaluation, whatever we are performing in terms of evaluation, that is going to add to the final score sheet of the student. Assessment can be quantitative, can be qualitative, and it is not the part of the final score sheet of the student. We are trying to improve the quality of the work produced by the student gradually by giving him more instructions, the way he or she is able to understand. So this is the major difference between assessment and evaluation. But nowadays, not only at educational institutions, not only by the faculty, but in many of the policies, again, they are using these terms interchangeably. But there is a huge difference between assessment and evaluation practices. So when it comes to assess the performance of the student, what can we do? So the next question arises that if I want to improve the quality of the work that is produced by the student gradually, on gradual basis, I cannot say to my student that it is possible for me to shift your grade from D to A within 10 days. Is it possible, practically possible for me to shift the grade of the student from D to A? A can be shifted to A plus by giving extra instructional input, but is it possible for me to shift the level of the student from D to A within a semester, or say before or after MST 1? Yes, any member? आपको लगता है कि आप डी कैटेगरी के स्टूडेंट को विद इन 15 डेज आप उसे ए रैंक पे शिफ्ट कर दोगे?
No, ma'am, exactly. This is not possible.
Practically, it is not possible.
Yes,
So, as a teacher, we need to define that if the student is available with me at this particular level, what kind of instructional input I can give to my student, what type of activities I can give to my student, so that gradually I can improve the level of my student. so that I can engage my student in the process of learning. I can motivate and develop curiosity among my students to learn more. So that is why assessment is there. That is why it is being said that regular, continuous, formative assessment need to be the part of instructional delivery. So as per the new education policy. So when we say that we are doing assessment, we are actually collecting information. So on what basis we are collecting information? The teacher can administer a test. So in a classroom, when we give quiz to the student, so at the end of this particular STC also, there will be one quiz that is assigned to all of you. So that quiz is basically to collect information. That quiz is not linked with the certification of the course. So on the basis of the marks received in the quiz, it is not that your certificate will be restricted by NITA Chandigarh. It is just to assess your performance, that whatever you have covered during this particular program, are you able to go through that information? So that is assessment only. If it is an evaluation, those who are able to complete that quiz, those who are able to get good score defined by the management, only those candidates will get certification of the course. So we are assessing your performance. We are not evaluating your performance. Certification is not linked with the quiz, but quiz is mandatory for all the participants so that we can assess that whether they are able to learn something out of this course, or whether they are able, whether we as a faculty able to engage you, all of you. So that is why we administer a test during lectures, during session, when the experts or the faculty members from NITA Chandigarh ask you questions, we just collect information, because in this particular platform, we all are matured learners. You also faculty of different institutions. We are also here faculty who is interacting with all of you. Maybe your experiences are way more advanced as compared to my experiences. So when the initial of the discussion or within the session, we ask few questions to all of you, we again collect information that what need to be the instructional method, what need to be my instructional strategy for a session. Say for example, in the initial of this particular session only, when I said that whether you are using rubric at institute level, and if many of the participants responded as yes, this need not to be my instructional strategy. In that particular case, if you are already using rubric sheet, I will assign one activity to all of you and request all the connected members to prepare a rubric sheet and then make a presentation, and based on that presentation we will continue with the session. So we are collecting information by asking question. Teaching strategy, when we said case study method, role play method, jigsaw method, numbered head together, think pair share, there are 101 teaching strategies available. So if I'm selecting teaching strategy for assessment purposes, maybe I organize a fishbowl method of discussion, maybe I go for a think pair share detail, maybe I go for a peer learning and peer evaluation. So with the help of different teaching strategies also, I can assess information. Performance based test also. So there are, in technical education system, there are many of the activities that actual need assessment of the performance. So say for example, in every branch, I would say, whether it will be electrical, electronics, mechanical, textile, chemical, there are many subjects, many technical area where we have learned and we teach to our student the working principles of machinery. So that is a part of the theoretical concept. But when I want to assess that whether my student is able to understand that content detail or not, so maybe I will engage that class in laboratory environment where the machine is actually in working condition, and I ask my student to identify or locate error, if any, to assess that whether my students are able to apply the learned information in a given situation. So there are many ways by the use of which we assess the performance or the level of the students in our classes. But when it comes to evaluation, we make certain judgments out of that. So assessment, I'm using it to improve the quality of the work. Evaluation is the final judgment that is passed by the faculty for a specific student. So when we said that this particular student is able to get more than 80% of the marks in a given semester, I am passing judgment. So when I'm designing test, that student, after appearing in the test, if he or she is able to achieve 80% of the marks, it means my judgment about that student performance was accurate. So we are passing judgment. But the major problem that I have observed over the period of time, I may be wrong, in technical education system, there is a very strong component of feedback that continue from the first semester up to the last semester. जो student आपका first semester में topper है, that student will remain topper in second semester, will be in a third semester, will be in a fourth semester, will be in a fifth semester. Maybe the major reason is the internal evaluation or the internal criteria. So as a faculty, we go by somewhere, we go by the feedback obtained from the fellow faculty members, obtained from the students also in a class, and we consider that this particular student is able to do something. We are not adding any diversity to the evaluation criteria. So अगर मैं in the first semester में 2 written assignment, in second semester 2 written assignment, in third semester again 2 written assignment, fourth semester again 2 written assignment, 2 MST, one project practical activity, no other activity is involved or introduced to the student. So there may be one student in my class who is not very good when it comes to a written assignment, but that student may be good when I give or assign a minor project activity to the group of the student. So we are not adding varieties to the activity, and we carry forward the feedback started from the first semester up to the last semester. And students who are very good in performing those kind of activity, they will able to obtain very good marks as far as internal evaluation is concerned. That is approximately 40% of your final scores. So somewhere when we are evaluating the performance of the student and basically internal evaluation, we need to carefully read the policy document or the criteria designed by the university. They said assignment. They specifically didn't mention that a written assignment. So assignment can be of any nature. So the point of discussion is when we are making judgment based on an evaluation, we at departmental level need to decide that what can be the probable activities that we can introduce for this particular subject, so that there is diversity in terms of activities, and we are able to cater the individual IQs that is available in a class. So there may be 60 different learners have different abilities. So rather than giving the same or similar type of activities semester wise, we need to involve them in variety of activities. And when we are using such kind of criterias in terms of evaluation, we need to design target specific activity. So any member from the group, what do you understand by target specific activities? Any member from the group? Target specific activities क्या होंगी? What is your target? What you want your students to achieve?
And the fulfillment of our learning outcomes, which we have, sort of conceptualized before the starting of the session, and maybe, when introducing the subject to them, we have a set of specified learning outcomes that we wish to achieve. So, taking
Thank you very much,
those as
Sinoma.
the goal, as the
Hmm.
target, we need to accomplish them and make sure that the students are learning those and they're able to achieve them.
Very rightly added by Dr. Seema Singh ma'am, that when it comes to the target specific activities, it is nothing but the learning outcome that have been designed by the faculty, and more or less for a given subject the learning outcomes divided into three different categories: the learning outcome based on the knowledge or the cognitive abilities, the learning outcome based on the psychomotor ability, and learning outcomes to modify the behavior of the learner. So when I said ability in terms of cognition, so that is the theoretical concept or the fundamental or basics of that particular subject need to be very clear to that particular candidate. The technical vocabulary need to be very high for that particular subject. So I always said I'm a national coordinator for communication skills, a MOOC course, and there are number of participants involved in that particular program. So till date, I think 40,000 plus candidates are already earned the certificate of that course, and that is on classroom communication. And in my sessions also at NITA Chandigarh, I always said that for an engineering graduate or for a diploma level student in a technical education system, communication is not only the command over a specific language. So we as a technical faculty are not here to have a command on different global languages, but as a technical faculty of a specific branch, I need to have a command on the technical vocabulary of that particular subject also. So there are many terms that is used by electronics engineer, but as a chemical engineer, I'm not aware of those. Electrical engineering, there may be many technical vocabulary or many technical terms that need to be known to that particular candidate, but it is not compulsory for a textile engineer to know. So when we said na target specific activity, the target need to be carefully defined. So if my student is say for example, if my student is presenting information in a core technical subject, I'm not only considering the verbal and non-verbal behavior in a presentation, but at the same time how the student is using that technical vocabulary to make the presentation more interesting and more engaging. So rather than giving the theoretical propositions or the theoretical definition in a presentation, how the student is presenting information with various graphs, illustrations, labeled diagrams, so that it is possible for the fellow students also to understand the various terms or the various technical terms that need to be known by the student population for that specific semester. So when we said that we are designing target specific activities, as a teacher, we need to define what we mean by target for a specific subject. For the subject of communication skill, your target may be the development of verbal and non-verbal behavior. So your presentation will carry these two different dimensions when you are evaluating the performance of the student. But if the same student is presenting information or presenting taking part in presentation for a technical subject, my major weightage need not to be on the verbal and non-verbal behavior. Yes, I will give weightage, but not maximum weightage. I will give maximum weightage for the information collection or the way students structured and organize information and present to the fellow student. How the student is responding to the question asked by the student or by the faculty related to that technical subject. So when we are designing target specific activities, the learning outcome need to be carefully defined, designed by the faculty, and based on that learning outcomes only, the teacher need to design evaluation criteria. Another example may be, say for example, you said to your student that while presenting information in a presentation based activity, you need to use different teaching learning aid. You need to use hyperlink. But as a faculty, first I need to evaluate that when I'm presenting information by the use of PowerPoint presentation, am I using those technical or teaching aids for the student? I'm creating hyperlink so that my student come to know that yes, in a presentation these kind of things help me to engage my learners or my student. So whenever we are designing any activity, we need to consider that based on the learning outcomes only, our evaluation criteria will be defined. Yes, Rajamouli sir, is there any question? So next is rubric. Rubric means the red earth for coloring. So it is again the Latin word. The meaning of the word is red earth for coloring. So why this particular rubric is very essential for us to design? We already discussed that there is a relationship between the learning outcome, assessment method, and the scoring method. Scoring method is nothing but the evaluation method only. So whatever you have designed for your student in terms of learning outcome, based on that you are going to select an instructional strategy, and within the class you are preparing for your student for the final evaluation by assigning different activities for them. Why we give written assignment to our student? so that at the end of the semester, when my student appear for a final examination, my student is able to synthesize information, able to present information in a specified time period as per the weightage given to that particular statement. So that is why we want our student to have a structured kind of writing. That is why we are giving assignment activities to our student. So your scoring method, evaluation method also be in line with the learning outcome that you have designed. So the next question arises that I as a teacher, I'm going to define learning outcomes for a specific subject. I will decide that this will be the assessment strategy I'm going to use for my class student. And when it comes to the scoring method, say for example, if it is an external examination, in India, in technical education system, when it comes to external examination, in many of the private universities, deemed to be universities, and other universities and institution, the scoring method is defined by the board and university. So we have a set criteria that in for internal evaluation, these are the different activities that we can give to our student, and this is the amount of or the percentage of the marks that is devoted to internal evaluation. But internal evaluation is in the hand of the department. The department can decide the distribution of the marks up to some extent. So there is flexibility available with the department to define their scoring criteria. As far as external evaluation is concerned, there is another faculty who is setting up the paper. Another group of faculty member is going to check the answer script, and there is another faculty who was there to teach the students that subject throughout the semester. So there are many stakeholders involved. So it is not possible for us to define a set criteria that for an external examination, what are the different dimensions that we are going to consider. So that is why as far as rubric as a tool, evaluation tool is concerned, we can use this tool in our country for internal evaluation purposes only, where the internal evaluation or the scoring method is defined by the department, and it may involve one or two faculty members at departmental level. But for external evaluation, it is bit difficult for us to introduce such kind of criteria until unless there is no uniformity at the educational evaluation reforms. So when it comes to the rubric is a scoring tool that explicitly represent the performance expectation for an assignment or for a piece of work. So it means whenever we are going to use this particular rubric sheet, we need to define that activity in number of parameters. So like we do task analysis, in the same way for a given activity, we need to divide that activity into sub part and need to decide that how much weightage is given to those different sub part. So keeping this in view, we are going to do one activity now. My request to all the participants, say for example, you are going to give a presentation skill activity to your student and say the presentation skill is of 20 marks. So at your end, you can decide that what type or what nature of presentation you demand, whether it is for the communication skill or preparing them for a job interview, or it is for any academic subject. So any kind of presentation skill you are going to design for your student, and that activity contain 20 marks. So what are the different parameters on the basis of which you are going to evaluate the performance of the student for presentation skill, and how you are going to distribute those 20 marks? So I will give 10 minutes to all of you. Kindly decide presentation skill activity assigned to your student is of 20 marks. What are the different parameters on the basis of which you are going to evaluate the performance, and how you are going to distribute those 20 marks among the parameters decided? So I hope the activity is clear to all of you. Yes, any member, if you have any doubt related to the activity? For 20 marks, you have to design presentation skill activity. Divide the presentation activity into number of parameters on the basis of which you are going to evaluate the performance, and how you are going to distribute those 20 marks in different dimension. So I will give you 10 minutes. At 10:50, there may be one or two presentation. Based on that, we will define the evaluation rubric sheet. So I hope it is clear to all of you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am,
Yes,
just a
Manpreet
small
Jagdish.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am. Just a small question with the presentation we have to consider would be online or offline, like they giving in the
That is your
class
choice, ma'am.
or no? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam, we have prepared for it.
Yes,
Amandeep
sir.
madam?
Yes, sir. Many of the participants already submitted. So this is your screen, na?
Yes.
Dr. Ashish Bhardwaj.
Yes, yes, ma'am, from our nodal center.
Yes, sir. Content, sir, I would like to know that when it comes to the presentation scale, this presentation is for which subject?
We have prepared it for project presentation.
Project work presentation. Okay.
Or teamwork will be there for them.
Content, 4 marks. So when you said content, what we mean by content?
What they are going to present, like, is related to the topic or not.
So is it the PowerPoint presentation, whatever they have written on a PowerPoint presentation, or
Yes,
you
PowerPoint.
also include the report of the project?
Yes, ma'am, it will be a PowerPoint presentation. This will be a team of 4 students who are going to present it. And the contents is the complete project which they have made during their final semester, and it will be presented in the form of a PPT. And the team of 4 students are going to present it, and this contents will be the main content of the complete project, what they've done in their for the whole semester now. And we are going to evaluate on the basis
So
of the
basically it is
contents.
the final presentation of the project.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. So when you said organization, organization means the structure of PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. The flow in which
Time
they go
management,
about.
how much time given for the presentation?
Ma'am, we give them 15 minutes of time, in which 10 minutes for the presentation and 5 minutes for the viva voice.
Okay, resources and references, 3 marks. So you want your student to add references at the end of the slides, or in the introductory part or literature review, all references need to be there?
It is mandatory to have it in the last slide, ma'am.
Only last slide, 3 marks.
Yes.
Reply
Yes,
to question raised, 4 marks. Innovative ideas to innovative idea in a final presentation, ma'am.
yes, ma'am. That is the most important thing. What all they have learned, what have they taken up, and how they are going to go about with that. That is the most important thing. Innovative idea.
Work distribution among team, 2 marks. So
This is
my
the
first question to the this particular presentation is, ma'am, when it comes to the project work, how many times you evaluate the performance of the student at departmental level?
Ma'am, it is first is when we take the synopsis. Second is when we take the first introductory viva for them. Then we have the final. Before the end term, we have one in the internal assessment. So in all 3 we take, and then final end term is done by the external examiners.
So total 4 will be there, na?
Yes, ma'am. 3 internal and 1 final. We try to prepare them in these 3, and then final end term presentation.
So there will be 4 different presentations for the project work. So for every evaluation, there need to be a separate rubric sheet.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
maybe there are 200 marks allotted for a project activity. For a 200 marks, you need to distribute that in these 4 evaluation, how much weightage will be given to the 4 different presentation made by the student. When you said content, it is not clear to me. So maybe your students are not able to understand what you mean by content in a final presentation. So when we do the final presentation, it is not only the structure of the presentation, but the major focus need to be on the implementation of the project methodology. Structure, organization of presentation is very good. Time management is very good. When you said resource and references, and you give 3 marks to resource and references, as per my opinion, this is the choice of the departmental faculty only, but as per my opinion, the resources and reference 3 marks need to be shifted to your second presentation when the student is introducing the topic and conducting the literature review for the same. So rather than giving 3 marks in a final presentation, you can add this to your second evaluation of the project. Innovative idea, when the student is in the process of identifying a research problem, in that particular case, this particular dimension need to be added. And the last of the presentation, the student can recommend or student can give the concluding remarks related to that particular project. So it may be a prototype model that is created by a student. It may be a field investigation that is carried forward by the student. So for that work that he had carried out during this project activity, those 2 marks given to that uniqueness only, not to the innovative ideas. Work distribution among team, it is only the supervisor who can judge, who can evaluate that whether all the students are working for that project in a team. But at the end of the presentation, when the student are in the process of giving answers or structuring responses for the question raised, only we can assess the cognitive ability or how much they contributed or participated as far as the project model is concerned. So team supervision, the marks need to be given by the supervisor. So you can shift these marks to their third evaluation. So on continuous basis, the supervisor will identify that whether the team of the students are able to work this or not. For final presentation, maybe every student need to present information up to some extent, and they need to be fully aware of what they have completed in their project. So reply to the question raised weightage can be increased rather than working distribution among the team members. So these are few of my suggestions. Another presentation that I was reading during, thank you very much ma'am for the presentation. Mr. Akshay Kumar sir, I think submitted us the very first presentation. Yes, Mr. Akshay Kumar sir said for attendance 3 marks. So Akshay sir, is it compulsory for give 3 marks for the attendance? It
Yes,
is a
ma'am. If
mandatory activity.
ma'am, this is a sort of kind like presentation after training period, like internship.
तो ये
Student those
attendance
who
आप
have
किसके
completed
marks दे रहे हो?
internship, exactly, ma'am. If the student is present, he will give him 3 marks. If he is not present, means absent, then there will be no marks.
If the student is available but he is not ready to present,
Ma'am,
फिर भी 3 number दोगे?
no, ma'am. Then it will be treated as absent because he is not able to present the idea at the time of allotted to him.
So my point of discussion is when we assign marks for an attendance, it is not the criteria for evaluation. As
Okay,
far
okay.
as attendance is concerned, it is an affective activity. Affective means behavioral activity. So whatever activity I assign to my student, I expect my student to mandatory complete that activity. So they need to be there in my class. So for attendance, as per my opinion, as a faculty, I will not give marks for attendance. If they are not
Okay.
available, I will simply assign 0 marks to them. If they are available with me in a class, I will distribute these 3 marks in different parameter that is being assigned. आप attitude के 5 marks दे रहे हो, attendance is the part of the attitude of the student only. वो
No, ma'am,
regular
attitude
है,
means
punctual है,
attitude
that is the
towards
part of the behavior.
Ma'am, I will say attitude towards problem solving.
So फिर वो आपको clearly लिखना पड़ेगा यहाँ पे.
Okay, ma'am.
So attendance को आप evaluation criteria में involve ना करो because
Okay,
in many
ma'am.
of the universities, in many of the boards, 75%, 85% is a mandatory attendance. तो वो
Exactly,
mandatory है, उसका हम उसे कोई additional reward नहीं देंगे.
Okay,
If
ma'am.
he or she performs activity, then we will give marks.
Okay.
So आप इस dimension के लिए आप सोच सकते हैं. Next is
Okay, ma'am.
अक्षय कुमार सर के बाद formatting of the presentation, content covered, flow of information, presentation skill of the presenter, and report submitted. So Monish sir, what we mean by formatting of the presentation and flow of information? I think sir is not available with us. Slide presentation, way of delivery. Santhil Raja sir, are you available with us on the platform? No, Santhil Raja
Amandeep
sir.
ma'am,
Yes, ma'am.
may I just say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, actually, I just wanted to let you know because others are also presenting. So right now, आपकी presentation pinned mode में नहीं है. So whenever you wish to present,
Okay.
एक बार मैम stop presenting करके present कर लेना. Otherwise फिर वो recording में नहीं आएगा मैम. ठीक है मैम, थैंक यू.
Thank you very much, Manisha. So there is another submission by Mr. Sandhil Raja sir. Slide presentation, way of delivery, communication skill, stage fear, and answering the queries. So now see, when it comes to dividing the activity into number of parameters, we need to consider that there must not be overlapping of different dimension. जब मैं कहती हूँ communication skill, stage fear, way of delivery, it is nothing but the part of communication skill. How the student is presenting information, that is the way of delivery and stage fear. So हम कितने नंबर दे रहे हैं communication skill को? 5 marks, 5 marks and then 2.5 marks. So 12.5 marks is just for the presentation skill. So that need to be identified, that presentation skill, yes, communication is an important dimension. That is why we are assigning presentation skill. So it can be verbal as well as non-verbal communication. How the student is answering the question, that is again an important dimension, that how he or she collected information and whether he or she is able to go through that information in a synthesized manner, that is again an important dimension. How the student is structuring the presentation, use of different visual aids, that is again an important aspect of a presentation. And how the student is responding to all the questions, that is again the part of the presentation only. Again, Deepika Sharma ma'am said content of the topic covered, content of the presentation. So whatever content in the topic assigned, that will need to be the part of presentation. So we need not to give additional marks again and again for the same activity. Way of PPT, understanding, fluency and confidence, and then demonstration. So I think you are able to get my point, that when it comes to assigning any activity to the student, first we need to divide that activity into number of subcomponents, and we need to critically analyze that whether while designing that particular activity we are able to give proper attention to the target designed for that activity. So जब मैं कहती हूँ presentation skill, my major focus need to be my student is able to present information in a very crisp manner by using appropriate verbal as well as non-verbal behavior, and whatever he or she is presenting, that information must be readily available with the student, that within the presentation or after the presentation, if somebody asks more elaboration, more explanation, or any question asked, the student is able to reply to that particular statement. So that need to be the part of that evaluation. If I said presentation of a project work, so it is not only the communication skill. Say at the end of the project work, what we are going to evaluate. So whatever problem identified by the student is able to do justice with the complete methodology defined during the second evaluation. Student is able to create a prototype model for that project work. Student is able to give responses to the question asked. Student is able to design a report, able to submit a report on time as per the format defined by the department or defined by the university. So that need to be think of when we are designing such kind of evaluation criteria for a student. Say laboratory practice, workshop practice, case study analysis. So there are many activities for which we need to design such kind of criteria in a clear manner. Say suppose I'm your student and you are writing the content of presentation, flow of presentation. So it need to be clear to me that what do you mean by the content of presentation? Is it you want me to collect information from authentic scientific resources, or if I collect information from Wikipedia or from XYZ Google website that are not very authentic, but that information is appropriate, that information is very attractive and engaging, so you consider that information or the content of presentation is very good. I simply copy pasted the images from the internet without knowing their license or copyright issue, but I made that presentation very attractive, so that presentation content is very good. So these kind of things we need to consider when we are designing such kind of evaluation criteria for our students. So today is the word of information technology. When I give an activity maybe of 20 marks to my student, one student may spend 3 hours to complete their presentation activity. Another student who is smart enough to use technology, that student may require only 20 to 30 minutes to prepare a presentation and present information. So in the word of information, we need to clarify to our student that for 20 marks, what are the different parameters of what are the different things you need to consider. You are not just copy pasting information or identifying information from XYZ resources and submitting it to me. These are the dimensions on the basis of which we are going to evaluate the performance. So that is the basic criteria of a rubric. Whatever activity you designed for your student, that activity first need to be divided into number of subcomponent based on the learning outcomes defined by the teacher, and based on that only you are going to give weightage to those different dimensions. I hope it is clear to all of you. Yes, any question till now?
Ma'am, we had also shared our presentation, so we were also keen on presenting what we've done with our presentation. How have we created the rubric scale? Would it be possible, ma'am, for us to share it?
Can you please repeat, ma'am?
Ma'am, we have also mailed you our presentation on
Meenakshi ma'am, I have already seen your email, ma'am. After the session, I will provide feedback.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
On an email, I will reply. So when it comes to the rubric sheet, this is the basic format that we need to follow. In a format, we need to give a task description. Task description is nothing but your expectation. So when we set presentation scale, so in a presentation I assigned to my student, my expectation may be when the student is presenting information, it must be the synthesization of information rather than just collecting information. The presentation must include graphs, images, or other illustration to make presentation more effective and interesting. When I said presentation, it must be time bound. So maybe 5 minutes I give to my student to present information in a clear manner. When I said presentation, my student need to use or integrate various media to make it more interesting and more engaging as per the audiences available. So these are my expectations for a project activity. So in a written manner, I will give in terms of task description to my student. When I said dimensions of the rubric sheet, dimensions are nothing but in how many subparts you have divided this particular activity. So there may be 3 dimensions, there may be 5 dimensions, but as per the literature and different evaluation tool, minimum the dimension, it is easy for the faculty to use that rubric sheet for evaluation. Scale can be qualitative if you're using it for classroom assessment purposes, but scale need to be in a quantitative nature as per the criteria defined by the board and university if we are using it for our internal evaluation purposes. So when we are defining the scale of the rubric sheet specifically in a qualitative term, that language need to be more appropriate as per the level of the student. So I can use the word fail, I can use needs improvement, I can use mastery, partial mastery, and at emerging level. I can use good student, good work, average work, or needs improvement. So whatever terminology we are using in a qualitative scale, that need to be more engaging, more uplifting for a student population. But again, it depends upon the level of the student. Say for example, a student is performing presentation in his or her PhD coursework, and for that presentation I'm not going to write it as needs improvement. So he is already in the highest qualification at this stage, and if that student is not able to present information, for me that student is fail. So if he's not able to present accurately, that student is fail. That student need to put extra effort to cover that particular dimension. So when it comes to the design of the rubric sheet, task descriptions are nothing but the expectations of the faculty. So those expectations need to be given in a written manner, in a very clear and simple language so that the students are able to understand. Then scale, qualitative as well as quantitative, depending upon fit for what purpose you are going to use that rubric sheet. Divide that activity into number of dimension and give weightage to the different dimension as per the nature of the activity. Say a dimension for a oral presentation, knowledge and understanding, thinking or inquiry, communication, use of visual aid and presentation skill. So weightage need to be given to the dimension 20, 30, 20, 20 and 10 point. Scale can be excellent, competent, need work. So that need to be decided by the department. Then description of the dimension. So you need to clarify what you mean by excellent communication skill, what do you mean by average communication skill, and when you said needs improvement, what are the different improvements you think your student need to consider. So that description need to be there. Say for example, case study analysis. This particular rubric sheet is holistic kind of rubric sheet where the activity is divided only into two different components and the description is given against the different scale along with the weightage provided to the different dimension. So there are many type of rubric sheet. Holistic type of rubric sheet is basically used for classroom assessment purposes. Say for example, a problem identification, simply 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If the student is able to demonstrate the complete understanding of the problem and all requirement of the task is included in the response, 5 marks. Demonstrate considerable understanding of the problem and all requirement of the task is included, 4 marks, then 3 marks and 2 marks. So this particular rubric sheet is very simple to prepare. Simply we classify on what basis we are going to give marks to the student. Why I give 4, why I give 5, why I give 3, why I give 2 marks to you. So that understanding need to be developed among student population. Another example for holistic rubric sheet is, for example, for a speaking activity, the scale is given up to 3 level only and then description is provided to the student that what we mean by exceeding expectation, meeting expectation and fails to meet expectation, to give reference to that particular candidate that what we mean by the approach of the student. Next is analytical kind of a rubric sheet. So when it comes to analytical kind of a rubric sheet, these kind of rubric sheets are mainly used for internal evaluation purposes. So for example, for a seminar activity, we have divided different dimensions as presentation skill, information collected, utilization of visual aid, and class participation. And as far as the scale of the rubric is concerned, we have divided the scale into 4 different categories: excellent, good, fair, and poor, as per the criteria defined by the university. So above 81% A grade, 61 to 80 B, 40 to 60 range C, and less than 40 D grade. And when the students are performing this activity, we will give the point awarded with the percentage. So this kind of rubric sheet is mainly used in many technical institutions as far as internal evaluation is concerned. We can also prepare rubric for the faculty development purposes. So rubric for the teaching effectiveness involves the many dimension along with the 4 different scales: knowledge in the subject, communication skill, dress code, punctuality, and other dimension can also be classified at departmental level. Say for example, the weightage given to the knowledge in the subject is 2 marks, communication skill 2 marks, dress code 1 mark. Now the scale distribution is 4 marks, 3, 2 and 1. Knowledge weightage 2, maybe the faculty have an updated information about the content. So head of department simply tick as 4 and 4 into 2, 8. So likewise, we will calculate the score of the teacher in terms of teaching effectiveness. So final teaching effectiveness score for a given faculty is 88%. Another is task specific rubric. So it can only be used for the single task. So when we set the single task, like in a project work, when there are 3 different evaluation or 4 different evaluation, for every evaluation you need to distribute marks, and based on that distribution you need to define or design a separate rubric sheet, and at the end of the semester all the scores will be added up to give final score to the student. Next is developmental kind of rubric. These kind of rubrics have been prepared to check the progression of any member. It may be faculty, it may be management policies, it may be student. So on a periodic basis, we are going to use the same kind of a rubric sheet and try to evaluate that up to what extent we are able to develop this individual, we are able to develop our practices, we are able to develop the effectiveness of our faculty members. So timeline is provided in this particular rubric sheet. So maybe for the faculty development purposes, after every 3 months, the same rubric sheet will be evaluated by the faculty itself and submitted to the management, so that it is easy for the management to evaluate the performance of the student and define. Say maybe in a private universities, developmental kind of rubric sheet is used for grading purposes of the faculty. Based on that, the increment provided to the faculty members. So these are reward based rubric sheet that is being prepared for the faculty. So stages in constructing rubric: reflecting why I'm giving this activity, listing what need to be the important dimension of this activity, grouping and labeling how many dimensions we can group or label together, and after the completion of the activity, what will be our next agenda. So that is the stages. Why we are using rubric? Because they are clear and transparent, they are timely, they are appropriate and reflective. So rubric basically is, we are providing a written criteria to our student along with the activity assigned. So when I said presentation or a group seminar, along with the activity, I will provide this rubric sheet. I will upload this rubric sheet on LMS facility of my institute, of my class page. I will provide this rubric sheet even on the notice board of my department, that my student, when preparing for the activity, come to know that these are the different dimensions on which I need to work. And if I want to shift my score from C to B, these are the major dimensions on which I need to spend maximum of the time. So that is why we are preparing such kind of criteria nowadays. So that is the basic thing we need to cover in a rubric sheet. So it must always be related with your learning outcome. Your activity need to divide it into sub-component as per those learning outcome. All the dimension as per the level of the student need to be carefully defined by the faculty. When you said excellent, do you consider the excellence as per the level of the student? Whatever you are teaching, on the basis of that only you are designing your evaluation criteria. Scales need to be very well defined, and description of the scale need to be very clear to all the candidates. So these are the different points that we need to consider when we are designing rubric. So this is all from my side. If there is any question, you all are most welcome to ask. Yes, any member, if you have any question. So we have provided you the basic information. Ma'am, can you please explain this by taking particular examples? So Dr. Pooja Sethi ma'am, I have already shown you one rubric sheet for the group seminar. Based on that, you are able to design a rubric sheet. And even on internet, when you search for a rubric sheet for a specific activity, there are number of rubric sheets available. As per the level of the student, you can prepare your own rubric sheet. And as far as the session on rubric is concerned, on YouTube, if you search for a rubric evaluation from Nita Chandigarh, there are recorded lectures also available. So you can have input from those lectures also. Yes, Lakshman Singh sir, as per the criteria defined by your university, you can give grade to that rubric sheet also. So if there is no question, I think we need to have a tea break, and after that the session will be engaged by another expert of this particular course. So thank you very much all of you for the 3 sessions that I have engaged during this particular program. So thank you very much all the members.
So thank you, Amandeep.
Thank you so much,
Thank you very
ma'am.
much.
Thank you very much
Amandeep
sir
ji.
for giving me opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank